Good afternoon and welcome to Daily Confession with Carter and Keri on Unsafe Space. Today is Wednesday, November 20th. Good afternoon to everyone except the ACLU.
So, Keri, I know we're going to talk about the ACLU tweet.
But you've got to tell me something else first.
Yeah, there's one. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
No, tell me.
I'll apologize to the audience because normally I say this kind of stuff to Keri before the show, but we don't have time today. So I'm just going to say it on the show. It's kind of relevant. Without saying where we were, I'm in a disagreement about homeschooling with the mother of my child, and we don't always see eye to eye. And so I'm agreeing to visit potential middle schools because next year will be time for middle school. So in that spirit, we visited a middle school. I won't say where it is, but I'll just say private school in the belly of the beast, if you can imagine places in the Bay Area that might be. We sat down, and the video they showed us at the beginning was of children literally filling out that form, Keri, that you and I did a show about with like the intersectional, my plumber identifies as blah, blah, or whatever.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Literally doing that, and then talking about some intersectional class thing they had. So like, okay, I took a deep breath. Fine, we watched that. Then they did a little tour. There was some problems with, they were actually really good educators, which was frightening because they like really understood child psychology and childhood development and pedagogy. They were really, really good educators. So without the social justice, the school would have been awesome. But so we visited all the things. We saw that you could see some of the stuff that they were doing in class that was going to bias children and whatever. So fine, I expected that. But then, I'm already feeling kind of like, oh, this isn't great. And then at the end, they have another presentation, and these three things happen in the first part of the presentation. One person stands up and says, some administrator at the school, well, some schools are into diversity and inclusion, but we know that equity is actually more important. And they started talking about social justice, actually mentioned social justice as very important.
Wow. Equity.
Talked about the only purpose of education being to make, like, the reason for education is so that you can be effective activists to change the world. That's the reason. Then said, someone asked a question about, do students get to choose some of their own activities? One of the answers, there are a couple different ways in which they got to choose activities, but one of them was, well, sir, there are lots of race-based affinity groups that the students can join on their like, okay,
wow.
Did you just say race-based affinity groups? So yeah.
This is like a little indoctrination factory.
Right. So literally, and talking about social justice, but then, so Keri, this is the culmination, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to like hold, so my daughter's with me and she's like, Dad, like, don't make a scene, right? So I'm like trying to be quiet, right? She says I laughed during this part out loud. I thought I kept it to myself, but maybe she's more objective. The head of schools gets up. I'm like, all right, we're going to hear from the head of schools. First thing out of his mouth. I'll call him Bob. I don't want to reveal his name. Hi, everyone. My name is Bob. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I laughed, apparently.
I would have too. I'm sorry. I would, yeah.
And so I asked my daughter later, obviously this is not, the school's no longer on our list, but I asked my daughter later, I said, so can I ask you a question? When Bob got up there in front of everyone, before he said anything, did you have any idea that he might be a woman?
Like, any doubt that he was a man?
He had like a full beard, like the old bearded guy. There was nothing, there was no ambiguity about his gender. But it's so horrible, Keri. I mean, we want the best for our kids, and so I'm giving this a shot. I'm looking around at.
Oh gosh.
But man, every moment I think, well, homeschool, I don't have the resources to provide her with all the things I'd like to. Then I go see one of these schools, and it's like, yeah, I think I'll pass. It's like an oncologist who devotes his time to giving people cancer.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's even scarier when they understand child psychology and pedagogy, because then they can do a really thorough job of indoctrinating your
Oh,
child.
they were very competent. Like,
Yeah.
they were it was a great, like, great learning. Like, I'm sure she would learn some things really well, but it would all be in this framework of social justice. And it, yeah.
I had a talk with a friend recently who homeschools her kids, and she was talking about how difficult and trying it is, especially at the ages that they're at right now. And but then she said, however, no matter how difficult it is, I mean, she's like, there's no way I could put them in public school knowing what's happening there. There's no way.
Yeah.
So this is my only option.
Yeah.
And
It's crazy. It's
yeah.
crazy. But it couldn't have been more over the top. I felt like everything that we said is happening was just like laid out in presentation format as a pitch to come to the school, to the parents.
We should load a DVD with some of our best episodes about this, and you can just, when you turn the schools down, you could be like, here's why. And just
yeah. Here's my rejection letter.
Here's my rejection list of episodes.
Yeah.
So I have a heart out today.
I know. We'll get to real subjects.
And we'll get, no, I'm just saying, just so people know, we're going to try and keep this short. And I apologize because this is a topic I have a lot of passion about, and I'm very, very wound up about. So just keep me on track, Carter, so I can get.
I'm gonna let you rant. It's fun.
Oh my!
Do you want to see the tweet first?
Yeah, well, I've got it here. Hold on.
Okay, good. You can pull it up.
Okay, so yesterday was International Men's Day. Happy International Men's Day, Carter. Which, by the way, I think those things are dumb anyway. I don't care if it's.
Yeah, that's why I didn't talk about it on the show. I did tweet about it just as a, toxic masculinity doesn't exist, but I didn't want to give it a lot of due.
Yeah, it's like, come on. I forgot to get you a card, Carter. Anyway, this is what the ACLU tweeted. Now, I've got a couple things to say about the ACLU.
Well, read this out loud because some people are listening.
Okay. ACLU tweeted, "There's no one way to be a man. Men who get their periods are men. Men who get pregnant and give birth are men. Trans and non-binary men belong. Hashtag International Men's Day."
Where do they belong?
I don't know, because where do they belong? Because apparently man doesn't mean anything. So what are you trying to transition to? If man means absolutely nothing, where is it that you're trying to belong? I don't get it. Like, does man have a meaning or does it not?
No.
And with them, it doesn't. Nothing about this makes any sense. But this pissed me off for a couple reasons. One, most obviously, they can't even say anything positive about men on International Men's Day. They have to make it about women who want to be men. They have to make it about.
That pissed me off too.
That's okay. Okay, great. You can't even say anything about men. You got to talk about women. The other thing that's obviously wrong with this is that this is biologically untrue. This is factually untrue. This is complete ideological crap. Men do not get periods. Men do not get pregnant and give birth. That's not a thing that happens. And it's like posting a tweet saying 2 + 2 = 5. One of the best responses I saw was Matt Walsh, who was like, a circle is also a perfectly good square, or a circle
there's no way to be a circle. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, a circle that has 8 sides is also a circle. No, it's not. It's not a circle then. Either words mean something or they don't. And so this is all factually untrue. And then the third thing that really bothers me about this is that the ACLU died a couple years ago, and this is part of its rebirth. So I don't know if people were paying attention, but there were these leaked internal documents that came out a little over a year ago. And in those documents, they were blatantly talking about and arguing about the fact that they're going to switch course, that they're no longer going to focus on civil liberties, which is their entire purpose. They're not going to defend free
in the
speech.
name.
Right, it's in the name, the ACLU, civil liberties, right? They are no longer going to defend free speech and civil liberties if if it's at odds with SJW ideology. They didn't call it SJW ideology, but that's what they meant. If it's
So
at odds,
SJU now, it should be the new acronym.
yeah, they should just change it, because they are no longer doing what they do. And I used to donate to them. I know a lot of liberals who were pissed off about this, because it's like, part of the reason we supported the ACLU is because they used to be principled. They used to defend free speech and civil liberties, no matter who it was, because they had principles. They would defend people with odious views. They took a lot of flack from the leftists because they defended the KKK. Like they would defend their right to assemble, even if they had odious racist views. It's like freedom of speech for everyone or no one. So now they're like, don't care so much about freedom of speech or civil liberties. We're just here to indoctrinate people into our ideology. And this is the new ACLU, guys. What about this has anything to do in this tweet? What does this have anything to do with civil liberties, individual rights, free speech? Nothing.
Well, they would argue that of paramount importance is the right for women who wish they were men to be to get all of the benefits of being a man in society and have their delusions completely and utterly validated by every
What
member.
benefits are those? Can they get their prostate checked?
I don't know. Yes. Gad Sad said, I'm married to Gad's response was, I'm married to what did he say? My wife identifies as a man, but is a biological female. Can someone please tell me a doctor who can check her prostate?
Yeah, I said, no, my husband is a biological female.
Yeah.
Can you ACLU, provide a reference for someone that can check her prostate?
Yeah. I mean,
like that's funny, because it points to the fact that this is a biological untruth. Like, he was using humor to point out that this is absurd. And I actually had people arguing with me about this. I actually had people arguing with me. At some point, I'm like, really? This is the hill you're gonna die on, is you're gonna say that men can get their periods and that men can get pregnant. And they pull out all the false arguments. And a lot of these we just read about in Coddling of the American Mind. They make it all about either or. They try to say, either you're okay with speaking lies like this, or you hate trans people.
Right.
That's not true.
Right.
And a lot of trans people are sick of this. Actually, trans friend of mine was like, this doesn't represent me, and this makes me cringe, because this political ideology has nothing to do with me. And by the way, he's a biological woman who identifies, he's like, by the way, I haven't had my period in 30 years. Most trans men go on hormones and stop having their period.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't even have
we don't even care. What is this about? Like, this is just a political thing for them, and it makes life harder for me. That's what he was saying. It's like, this isn't good for trans people. And everything about this sucks. The ACLU, RIP, rest in peace, ACLU. You used to mean something and stand for something, and now you're just another ideological indoctrination center. And the thing about this, I know I'm on a tear, but one more thing. We've talked about this. It doesn't matter what the organization is, what the community, any organization, church, company, community, online community, like the knitting community on Instagram, any group can be infiltrated by this belief system. And once it reaches a critical mass within that closed group and it takes over, it becomes the number one priority in that group. So once there were enough SJWs, and I've heard a little bit about the internal war that happened there. Once there were enough SJWs there to take over, this is what you get. It ceases to be about civil liberties. Whatever the original purpose of the group was, or the organization or the church, whatever the original purpose was, is subverted, and this ideology becomes primary.
Yes, there's a parasite that I think infects ants and makes them and forces them to not forces them, I guess, infects their brain and makes them crawl to the top of a little leaf where they then die, and like I guess a fungus or something grows out of the top, or the parasite, I don't know, grows out of the top of the head and gets picked up and spreads or whatever it is. It's like a parasitic fungus, I think. That's what social justice is, right? It's this parasitic organism. This is the terms convergence, which we've talked about previously. but it's a parasitic ideology that comes in and uses the host for the propagation of its ideology without regard to the health or long-term viability of the host itself. It will kill the host because it's not a parasite that needs the host to continue living. It's a parasite that has it's part of a larger parasitic ecosystem. So it uses the resources of the host and is happy to kill it because there's other copies of that parasite out there. They're going to move forward, and obviously the ultimate goal is to change Western civilization completely. But
that is an excellent analogy. The parasitic, yeah, the host. It is that's brilliant. This ideology is a parasite that comes in, latches on to whatever the purpose, whatever your group is, whatever your closed community is, if it's a church, if it's a organization, a nonprofit, if it's a company, it latches onto it, sucks the life out of it, makes it about feeding the parasite, feeding the ideology, kills it in the end.
Yes, it's the other analogy that I like, which is a little bit more horror movie-esque, I guess, or horrific, is zombies. And I know that zombies is like a trite thing to say, but it's the zombie virus trope. It's social justice comes in, you get infected with it because you get bitten, and maybe sometimes it takes a while to gestate, but eventually you're biting your friend. And you're not the person that you were anymore. You're all about social justice. And it does that to organizations as well. Keri, I was thinking like a lot of times because they play this either or game with us where it's like, well, if you don't think that men who get their periods are men, you must hate trans people and you're a bigot and a homophobe and a transphobe or whatever it is. Let's just walk through this is what I think a rational society, how they would treat actual issues of intersex and trans issues. Right?
By the way, before you do that,
because
you're going to say intersex, and I want to make one other point. The same person who tried to use the either or falsehood, which is yes, don't let people do that to you. Either you're with me or against me. No, sorry, I'm not with you. I'm also not anti-trans. Like whatever. That's a falsehood. Then they tried to use the catastrophizing. They tried to say, if you oppose this, then you're against trans people's even right to exist.
Right.
Clearly, I'm not against your right to exist. Quit using hyperbole and overreacting and trying to catastrophize this. Right. And then the third thing this person did is what you just mentioned, intersex. He moved the goalpost at the end because he wasn't winning the argument. And so at the end he said, what about intersex people? And he didn't call them intersex, but he said, what about people who don't fit into X, Y, or XX?
Right. Which is why I want to address it, because that's the one that I think for rational people, that's the germ of doubt about the binary nature of sex that is used to push this anti-scientific crap about men having periods.
And I want you to address it. I just want to say quickly, when somebody does that in an argument, and he did that, it's like, point out the fact that they just shifted the goalpost. That's what they're doing. I was like, you're not talking about trans people anymore, dude. Now you're talking about intersex people. Okay. Because you can't win the argument on the terms we were already talking about. So you want to switch to something else and now talk about intersex people, which, by the way, intersex people make up less than 1% of the population. It's a fraction of 1%. And it's people who have a genetic anomaly. It's a statistical anomaly. You want to use that to define the norm. As you've mentioned before, Carter, there are more people who have an extra finger than there are people who don't fit into male or female. That's not a trans person. Quit conflating that with a trans person and quit moving the goalpost. Either talk about trans people or talk about intersex, but don't pretend like that's the same thing.
Right.
Okay, that's my little thing.
No, I agree. But the reason I want to talk about intersex is because I think it is used as a wedge into corrupt thinking about this. So there are a very, very small percentage of the population that's intersex. And they can have an extra chromosome, or sometimes they'll have both sets of organs, but one might be internal, and so they don't notice it. Like testes are internal for some reason, and it's not noticed. There are anomalies that happen. Those are medically recognized as anomalies, as just like a sixth finger is an anomaly. Like the fact that some people have 6 fingers doesn't mean hands have no definition for the number of fingers they have. Like, no. Gloves are still 5-finger gloves. It's not a bigoted to have a 5-finger glove and expect people to have 5 fingers. Just some people have an anomaly. Okay, fine. So when you have someone who's coming up and saying, "Hey," because typically, if you think about trans, it's people. Their argument is like, "Well, I identify as." We'll use their language. I identify as the opposite gender. Maybe I'm a man who identifies as a woman, or I'm a woman who identifies as a man. And what they mean by that is, I don't feel like I'm a female. I have the female biology, but I don't feel like a female, right? I don't feel like a female. I feel like I feel like I fit in more with males, and psychologically and mentally. Um, and the I think the rational response to that is, first of all, maybe do a little bit of medical inquiry to figure out, well, are you one of these small percentage of intersex people? Because if that's true, maybe there's something real going on, and you might act, because sometimes intersex people maybe do need surgery. They need to have the other organs removed, or there's hormone problems going on, or whatever. So first, like, it's fine to actually do the medical work to see if there actually is a problem. But assuming that there isn't then an anomaly medically, at that point, it's pretty clear to me that the answer, aside from therapy, should be, look, there's no one way to be a female, in the sense that, like, so this is the part where I don't agree with what the ACLU is saying, because that's not what they mean by this, but you don't have to like dollhouses and dresses and whatever the stereotypical female things. If you feel like you want to play football and hockey and like do stereotypical male things, you're allowed to be a woman and be that. A woman can be stereotypically male things. A male can do stereotypical female things. It doesn't mean you're in the wrong body. It doesn't mean there's anything like, you don't need to change the definition of biologically what you are. You don't need to say, well, I feel like a woman, therefore I'm a woman. You can just say, no, I'm going to be a man who is, more effeminate, and this is how I like to be, and I'm going to be Boy George, or whatever it is from the 80s, right? I'm going to be that direction, or I'm going to be a woman who is just more butch, and that's going to be my way of being, and that's totally okay. And if you've got some anxiety beyond expressing yourself fully without also self-negating, because trans like self-negate also is like, well, I hate the fact that I'm this other gender, right? I hate the fact that I'm the wrong sex. Like, okay, you need to learn to express who you want to be and be comfortable with who you actually are. Like, I don't like that I'm short. I'm not about to go have, an extra few inches of steel put into my femurs so that I can be taller. Like, that's not, I accept the kind of body I'm born into, and then I express myself how I want to in that body. That doesn't mean, like, you don't get to then say, well, what we need to do is change the body that you're in and have everyone else agree that you're actually this other thing that you're not. So I
have a caveat to that.
Yeah.
Some people do. I believe some people do.
Do
It's
what?
a very do need to change. Some people, it's a very small percentage of people who do better when they transition. And that's fine. If you're one of that, it's like less than a fraction of a percent of people. Most people, if before we started indoctrinating kids and people with this religion of, if you feel differently, therefore you are, and you're in the wrong body and you need to medically change. Before we started doing that, we used to do therapy, and they found that the majority of people eventually came to terms with their actual biological sex and were happy that they did not transition. Do you know what I mean? Like, you let people work it out. But there's a very small percentage of people who do, for whatever reason, feel bad. That it's not just that they want to be, Blair White doesn't just want to be a feminine man. Blair White wants to be considered a woman and called she and her. And that's fine with me. I don't care. Do what you want. Those trans people like Blair White also do not agree with this crap being pushed on people, because Blair White would never pretend that she's a biological woman. And, like my friend who was commenting in the thread would never pretend that he is a biological man. Like, he wants to be referred to as a man and as he, and Blair wants to be referred to as she, fine. But there's not this, they want to do the activists who pretend to speak on behalf of trans people, and they don't. they want to do away with the category of biological sex entirely. They want to pretend like biological sex is a social construction. It's not. It's a biological fact. And anyway, that's my caveat, is for even with people who, the very small percentage of people who do not in the end feel comfortable with their biological sex, most of those people that I know are not on board with this crap either.
Right. So my point wasn't that it never gets to that point, but my point was, like, it starts with, it starts with therapy and maybe medical investigation to see if there's actually something, there's an anomaly. And if it doesn't get to that point, like, yes, it may be that you end up with someone who's like, you know what? I don't just want to be an effeminate man. I like this is thought about it. We've gone through the therapy. We resolved other issues. Do I think it's probably not, I personally think it's probably not healthy most of the time to take that extra step, but maybe it is sometimes, and I don't really know, and it's not my call, and I don't want it to be my call. I don't care. So it's their call. So fine. They work on the psychology, but even when they make the transition, like, even let's just take Blair for an example. I would say, okay, you can present as a, we've done therapy. Let's assume she's gone through all the therapy. I don't know her details, but say Blair's gone through all the therapy. Okay, fine. This is really something that's important. It really matters to her. She really, we're certain that there's not other unresolved psychological issues there. And there's no anomalies. She falls into this category of, like, maybe a transition is actually warranted. Okay. Still, the message to Blair is, you'll never be a biological female. We can't change that about you. What we can do is help you present as a woman and be considered a woman by society in general. But something you're always going to have to live with is when you go to the hospital and they ask what sex you are, you're going to have to always say male. You may have to say male with some caveats if you've had some surgery or hormones or whatever, but we can't change the fundamental biology of what you are. So
but they want to.
I understand, but I'm just talking about, like, how a compassionate society would approach this kind of thing.
How they would, right?
Right. This is what you would do, Blair. Like, yes, you can present as a woman. People who are normal, average, like, generous, nice people will see that you're presenting as a woman, refer to you as a woman, see that that's how you're living and what you really want to be, and that it's important to you. But when you go to the hospital, you can't sue them if they treat you like a man, or you have to understand that your biology didn't change. Your biology did not change.
As an aside, that's not the world we live in, and they are trying to accommodate people's delusions even at the hospitals. And we've mentioned this before. I have a friend who works at Harvard Medical School, no medical background whatsoever. Her background is in activism and ideology, and her job is to indoctrinate medical students with this crap. And they just celebrated a victory I saw on her Facebook page last year, because a hospital decided it was going to take male and female off of the hospital bracelet. So they would no longer be identifying you as male or female. What could go wrong with that? Well, we've already seen the woman who was pregnant and the baby died because she went to the hospital with abdominal pains, but was a trans man and presented as a man and told them she was a man. And they didn't identify they didn't identify that she was pregnant soon enough because she didn't tell them she was a woman.
Man, that's my point. I'm not saying, my whole point was, like, this is how it should be handled, not this is being handled.
And I'm just saying this is how it's being handled.
Yeah, it's being handled in the opposite way of the way it should be. What we're doing is saying, men who get their periods are men, and men who get pregnant and give birth are men. That's what we seem to be saying, right? And that's not true.
None of that's true. I have one other quick thing. Maybe we should do a cafefe more on this, because there's a lot more. But
I'm constrained.
This one guy kept arguing and using these false arguments. The whole false they're like, oh, well, you're with me against me.
False dichotomy. Yeah,
the false dichotomy, and then also using the catastrophizing, using sarcasm. And I pointed out to him, it's like the way he was using sarcasm wasn't even skillful. It's like, you're using it as a crutch. You're not, and you're smart enough not to have to lean on it like that. Like, sarcasm, I think, he was like, sarcasm is a great tool. Yeah, I think so too. And this is not a time to use it. Like, you can just speak your mind. You don't have to you're not using it deftly like a surgeon as a scalpel. You're using it as a crutch, literally, because you're too lazy to say what you think and to make an argument. And
Sarcasm is not a great debate tool. It's a great tool for entertainment, conversation, gotchas, but it's not a good, like...
There's nowhere to go in conversation when you start doing that, and you're basically saying the conversation's over. Because he says, well, it would be awful if the ACLU starts recognizing gay people as human or something like that. And it's like, dude, A, you don't believe that, so you're saying something you don't believe, and you think you're clever because it's sarcasm, right? But I don't believe that. Nobody in this thread believes that. So why are you saying it? There's nowhere for this to go. That's a clumsy, lazy attempt at sarcasm. It's not skillful at all, and it's beneath you. So just say what you want to say if you want to continue the conversation. Otherwise, what you're doing is saying, oh, I'm going to say something I don't believe and you don't believe, and the conversation's over. It's like, that's stupid. It's a waste of my time and yours. So, but anyway, he did that. But one of the things he said, which just really, really got to me, and they depend on this. They depend on this for people. He goes, what's the big deal? Like, this is just so minor. And this is just gosh, what's the word he used? It's just the smallest, like, it's not a big deal, right? Like, why is everyone freaking out? This is just such a minor thing. And I'm like, are you for real? Like, this is like saying 2 + 2 = 5. Why can't you just repeat that? Huh? Like, why can't you guys just be down with it? It's just such a small thing.
It's funny because they're simultaneously saying, what's the big deal? And they're catastrophizing if you don't do it. Like, the world will end. It's like, well, I guess it's a big deal then, right?
Yeah. It's like, but what's the big deal with just lying and saying 2 + 2 = 5, guys? Like, let's just all agree. We'll just say 2 + 2 = 5. And what's the big deal with that? And I was reminded of, and I said to him, it's like, here's the big deal. You know that Alexander Solzhenitsyn quote, like, let the lie come into the world. Let it even triumph, but not through me. And I am not going to speak. This is how an entire society and culture starts to crumble, is by accepting these lies and saying, what's the big deal? It's just pretend like a woman is a man and man's a woman, and just that biological sex isn't real. What's the big deal, guys? Let's all lie together. Let's be cool with being forced to lie. And here's what happens. Here's what the big deal is. This happened yesterday to Trigonometry, which is a comedy channel. They did an interview with Posey Parker in which they pushed back actually quite a bit against her beliefs, but she was very outspoken. I thought she was amazing. And she basically said, trans women aren't women. And this is a YouTube notice that they got sent with. Their video was outperforming their others. It was very popular, also obviously controversial, because it's 2019, guys. You can't say you can't make a statement of biological fact. You can't say trans women aren't women when they're not women. You can't say men aren't women. Well, they're not women. But you can't say that. YouTube says, hey, our team has reviewed your content, and unfortunately, we think it violates our hate speech policy. We've removed it from YouTube. They took the video down. That's what the big deal is. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna name call. That's what the big deal is. You moron. Okay, I will say it. You moron. Like, that's what the big deal is.
You know, if the ACLU of old was involved in this issue, they would be fighting for Trigonometry's rights to have free speech. That's what they would be fighting for.
Damn, what an excellent point. Yes, the old ACLU would be standing up for Trigonometry right now.
Like, they'd be repping Megan Murphy for free in court right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What an excellent point that I totally missed. Thank you, Carter.
Well, Keri, this makes me want to interview Posey Parker, whom I have reached out to, and we will see if she responds.
I was saying I would love to talk to her, but regardless, I'm glad there are people like that, like her, out there speaking this, even if they're getting censored. You guys should all go to BitChute and watch the full interview, because it's not on YouTube anymore. Because YouTube, hey, are there any other liberals like me who are getting sick and tired of these big companies telling us what we can and can't watch and what we can't listen to, what ideas we can have? I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of being told that I can't speak truth, because truth is now hate speech to say something true. Like, Tiger is not a dog. Tiger's a cat, guys. And if you're not cool with calling him a cat, I'm going to call it hate speech and ban you from my platform. He's a cat.
What's the big deal? What's the big deal? It's a cat. Just call it a cat. Make Keri happy.
Just call him a cat, guys. What's the big deal? If you don't call him a cat, you're against my right to exist. Right? Right?
I mean, we joke, but that's where this is headed. This is why you stand up for truth. even if it seems little, because pushing lies like that lie, it might seem like a little thing, but it has huge consequences that we can't even
Huge.
predict. Lying has massive consequences. And not only does it have consequences because of that particular lie, but it opens the door for a whole host of lies.
Once they get you to start accepting and speaking lies out of fear like this, what's the big deal? Just say and speak this lie. You think there aren't going to be more?
Right. What's the big deal? I identify as a heart surgeon. Lie down.
You're against my right to exist
Yeah.
as a person.
Are you trying to invalidate my right to exist?
Are you invalidating my very existence? No, I'm saying you're not a heart surgeon.
Yeah.
You can exist. You exist. You're not a heart
Don't
surgeon.
let me do brain surgery on you. You are invalidating my right to exist.
Oh my gosh.
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal, guys? If you have compassion, you'll let me operate on you. My sense
In fairness, the counter argument they would say is I would actually be doing harm to other people as a brain surgeon. And my counter argument to that is this idea actually does do harm to people, particularly, and we've talked about this a lot, particularly children, there's a modern day Tuskegee experiment happening with children who would probably end up identifying more as gay or lesbian, but who are having, let's say, non-heteronormative thoughts as children, being told, therefore you are this other sex. Here's a bunch of untested hormone blocker therapy, and let's shove you off into surgery. Oh, by the way, you may be sterile for the rest of your life, and we've permanently altered your development in a way that can never be recovered. But, hey, the ACLU says that there's no one way to be a man. So who are we to question?
The ACLU says men can have periods and get pregnant and give birth, guys.
Right.
Goodbye, ACLU. I encourage you guys, if you see them on the street, I saw them last year, these young, inarticulate people employees for the ACLU trying to sign up members. And I told them, I used to be a member. I used to donate money. I will never again. And because you guys don't stand for civil liberties, you're not doing what you claim to do at all. You're pushing ideology now. And so no, thank you. And they had no idea about the leaked internal documents about their own organization. But when I told them about it, then they tried to defend it, even though they hadn't even read up on it. They were like trying to defend it.
Well, this is the other thing that I think it's an important thing to understand about why convergence happens, because it seems like a weird thing. Like, why are they taking over these organizations? The reason is, and this is why we should be vigilant here. The reason is building a brand like the ACLU had takes years, lots of effort, lots of risks, lots of money, lots of human resources. It took a long time for the ACLU to build the brand where they were widely respected as being principled on individual liberties. And that took a long time. The social justice community can't, with their own ideology, build a brand with that much respect, because their own ideology is abhorrent to most Americans. So what they need to do is steal the brand steal a brand that already has brand equity, that already has positive, favorable views is viewed favorably by the population. They need to take that brand and hide behind it to implement their agenda. Because if they just started the ASJU, right? If they started the American Social Justice Union pushing this crap, no one would want to support them. They need that brand, and they're relying on people who don't realize that they've been converged upon, that still think of the ACLU as the old ACLU. They're stealing your money. It's a fraud. They're committing fraud that, like, maybe not legally, but they're fraudulently like, oh, this is what you think of with the ACLU. Ha 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 ha. We're actually not that anymore, but we're not going to advertise that. Keep giving your money. Yeah. And that's what they do at every organization. They steal brands. They're wearing the brands as masks to trick you.
They stole Google. They stole YouTube. They've converged at all these places. That's why these places, it's like SJWs didn't build
anything.
Google. Yeah, they've never built anything. Yeah, they go in and they convert.
Yes. Just like parasites they need the host. They don't Parasites don't like have their own little communities and build stuff and whatever. Like parasites find a freaking host. That's what they do. Social justice, it's like the universities and schools are incubators for like the zygotes of social justice, and they go out in the world and they need a host, and so they attach themselves to some host and eat it alive.
It's like that at the very beginning of the school you told me about visiting the middle school. They are saying to you that the purpose of school is to create little zombies that are going to go out into the world and bite and infect other people.
Yes, that's become their explicit purpose. But you can see the remnants of what once was a good school, right? What was once a school focused on academics. But, you know, it's been hollowed out and still has, you know, there's still some good functioning organs. The main problem with that, though, is I would prefer incompetent social justice. Like, you want social justice warriors at the head of incompetent organizations because they can't accomplish as much. Unfortunately, they're very good at infiltrating the best, most competent organizations and converting those. Obviously, those are the targets, right? So they're not trying to infiltrate Gab. They infiltrate Twitter, right? They don't want to infiltrate your crappy startup that's competing with Google. They want to infiltrate Google, and because they go where the power is. So
they are power hungry. Okay, I have to go. Carter, try not to have any period cramps. Well, until I get back.
Yeah, you know what? I may give birth later, but you know, I'll try. I'll try.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. Have a good day, Keri.
Take care, guys.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing. Shout out to our Subscribestar peeps. Keep it coming. We love you. And the more you subscribe on Subscribestar and donate, the less Keri has to go to real work.
This is going to become our fun drive, when the less Keri goes to work.
Yeah. Keri out of work.
Bye, guys.
Bye.